Okay, so another little progress video here. So I'm still working on the grappling hook. I got some new, as I said, there's a lot of things that go wrong when development process. So I did have it working, and if you can bear with me, I'm going to relaunch. But this was, if I can open the debug console back up, a null point, yeah, it's a null point exception in the collision box handler. So I've had this happen like 3 or 4 times now while testing. The player's collision box does not like to be wedged into things. And let me phrase this, not even the player's collision box. I've had this happen with simple things like particles, bullets, fake entities. Nothing likes to be collided without a collision box. And unfortunately, when you wedge something into it, it screws with the collision box and it's breaking the game. You know what? There's a real easy way to fix this. Yeah, what we can do is just put a try catcher on it. This is a really bad way to handle things, but when you're testing, it's acceptable. One thing you never want to do though is say I comment this out and it's just catching exceptions here. You never want to do that. It's called silently catching. Really bad idea as a developer to do. But printing errors out when you get problems, you know there's a problem here, and if you know it's going to happen, and you know you don't have a lot of control over it happening, see there's no way to prevent it, then putting a try catcher on things actually does work out pretty well. It also gives you more data so that way you can test in a live workspace. So say the crash happened and you had this try catch here, instead of the game completely dying on you, you'll see the error and you go, hey, what if I tweak this or adjust this, and then you can sit there and you can play with the crash and you can watch to see if the crash continues to happen. Without the try catch, then you have to do what I'm doing right now and then wait for the entire game to load up, which I'm not going to lie is going to take a couple minutes. It varies on my computer speed, but because I have a few mods in here like Industrial Craft, Britannia, a few other larger mods, it does take a while to load. There's multiple phases of the load process. There's the initial phase the Forge goes through, and it actually creates all the mods. Before that, there's actually even a core mod phase where it creates the core mods then modify classes and stuff. All the classes are then loaded, Minecraft's initialized. Pre-init is then called on mods. Pre-init's like the early stages. It's when you're supposed to make all your items and register your handlers. Init, you can also register your items. So you got the initialization phase, and then there's post-init where all your recipes are handled and all your cleanup. And then there's one more stage after that, which is called game load complete, where you can finalize anything that's missing. And a lot of people take advantage of that to register commands mainly, but then do mod compatibility with each other. Although, as far as I know, I've not been told how it's supposed to properly be used, but I know that pre-init is supposed to be items and handlers, and init is supposed to be entities, and then post-init is supposed to be recipes. And then you're never supposed to register items in post-init, and it's slightly acceptable to register items in init. I unfortunately do items in both init and post-init in Vault's engine, but that's the only mod you'll ever see me do that in. But let's get back to testing here, and less development talk here. I might do a tutorial series later on that kind of stuff. And I really mean might, because I've been talking about doing that for a couple years and have never got around to it. It takes way too much time to do tutorials. But hopefully we can test this, and I can show that the grappling hook is working. I can also point out the texture we got working with stuff. So yeah, this is the item texture. One thing I'd like to note is that I will be getting a 3D model for this, because it looks bad in the hand. But in the inventory slot, if I actually open up my inventory, it doesn't look half bad. And it's got a lot of tooltips to explain how to use it. Localizations are not loaded yet. I've temporaried them out at the moment. But left click to grapple, and now I'm getting some distance data. If you notice, I'm getting client and server data. So you see true for server, false for client. I'm tracking the distance variable on both to make sure that when I start to pull myself in, that it's updating on both. And as you can see, I just killed the server again. Yeah. As a developer, this happens to me often. This is the reason why it actually takes me so long to get stuff done. Although most of the delay in me getting stuff done is actually I have like 50 other things to do. But when I actually do get progress, start moving, it's usually takes me forever because the game crashes over and over again. But let's see, what was this bug? Oh yeah, so yeah, that try catch I put in there didn't help whatsoever. So what we're getting that's going on right now is that something in this list is returning null. It doesn't matter what. Something returned by the collision box system is going, well, you got a null collision box. Now, there are ways to fix this, and I actually might force a fix for it. Somewhere when this is called, there is a collision in here, so collider box being returned, that is null, or some part of it is null. And trying to understand why it happens is a bit tricky. Because it literally could be anything. It could be another mod developer. You know what, it's actually probably the rain. The sad thing is, I'm probably not wrong on this one. We're going to launch one more time, and then if it crashes, then that's the end of this video. But we'll keep looking here. One thing I can potentially do here, I could actually calculate the collider myself, and that actually would fix the problem. At least it would fix it temporarily. What I do need to do, I do need to actually store the position real quick. So backup X, and we'll be like player dot. Because if we crash, last thing we want to actually do is keep the current data state. We want to return to some previous state. I don't do this as often as I should, but you actually go look through Forge code and stuff, and you'll see that they do this. Anytime you have a critical error and you know that that critical error is potentially not a recoverable point, you want to go back to some previous point. That way, anything that happened is not going to be reflected back down on the rest of the code. So that way, in theory, if I do this right, I'll be standing where I was before the crash, and it'll go to pull me in again, and then it'll crash in here, but then it'll put me right back where I was standing before the crash. So we'll keep having this cycle where the crash will be generated, but then the game itself won't die. I'll have to test it out though. This is definitely a situation where the distance isn't quite right. So actually, there's another thing we can do to this to kind of prevent this issue. So if we go, if distance is greater than 1, then in theory we shouldn't get pulled through a block. Well, that's in theory, because unfortunately it's a little tricky to figure out exactly what's going on when you're going to be doing something, because we're working inside of a voxel world, and with a voxel world it's unpredictable what the terrain's going to be. It can be literally anything when you're doing this. So where the distance 1 check will work to ensure that I'm not going to collide with the target block that my grappling hook is on, it may not prevent me from, say, getting pulled through a wall that I'm somewhere nearby. So there's going to be some more code and a lot more testing involved in this process. But the good news is it's mostly working, and I probably could tweak it so that way if there's not a clear line of sight between you and your grapple point, the rope just snaps, and that will prevent you from getting pulled through a wall. There's a few other things I could do with that too. The biggest thing is if I could just get it working without this crash, then I don't have to worry about getting pulled through a wall, because then the code will stop at walls, and if it stops at walls, then that works out pretty well. There's a lot of little things I gotta do here. One of the things I actually really want to do, but I'm probably not gonna get time anytime soon for it, is make a pathfinder that'll actually figure out where the rope is wrapping around things. So if you're on a ledge, so if your grappling hook is over a ledge, and then you're hanging off the ledge, your rope will actually dangle off the ledge instead of going straight through the blocks and render-wise. That's code that's going to take a good while to fix properly. Another thing I need to do is actually save grappling hooks if you actually log off. Oh, no, we crashed again. That time I got thrown though. So yeah, testing on stuff like this is frustrating is an easy way to say it. But it's part of doing development work. See what that crash actually was too. Yep, null point exception in the same exact spot. This is what kind of frustrates me, is one of the hardest parts about mod developing, is you got to work around bugs that are in the existing architecture of, or existing code base of the product you're modding. And unfortunately, Minecraft is full of these problems. And they can be rectified, they can be fixed. Like, I can put an ASM patch on this to actually fix it. But the ideal is to try to get the code working without it. But we'll see how it works. But anyways, this is the end of this video. I'll get more of these out as I keep going. But that's it.